10.1 is almost here, and the new season will start it. And then we're gonna have some proper numbers, but until then we have a predictions video for all the DPS.
All of them, man, because it's like ranged and melee, and we know that you like predictions, and you will definitely agree 100% with everything that we say, because it's based on emotions.
Nah, it's fun, guys. It's fun to do these types of predictions. Obviously, these are all very speculative. You know, it doesn't mean that this will be reflective 100% on how the meta will actually look like in Season 2 of Dragonflight. But we did take all of our information, like from testing it on the PTR, looking at whatever logs that were available, talking with like different theory crafters and high-end players and so on. Like, hey, I even tested out a lot of my Red Paladin even before the Red reworks were live, using the Warcraft Love's companion app, just looking at how the impact is for the 2 set, for the 4 set, looking at the Templar strikes, how much damage they do, because there was always that questions like, okay, Crusader Strike is always poopy, but Templar strikes, looking at all of the damage numbers, they seem to do better. You can do that too, using the Warcraft Logs companion app. It's super easy. It's within the game. You have your interface over there. Use it on the PTR to track everything that works out. You can use it on the live game as well, just to improve yourself, see where you did wrong. So check the link in the description. Click on that, download your Warcraft Logs companion app, and you'll be ready to go. It helps us a million. Thank you, Warcraft Logs, for sponsoring this video. Now let's start it off with the predictions, kicking it off with Frost Death Knight. And like from what we've seen so far, we know like the tier set design is better than Unholy. We would say like the damage profile is looking, at least for the tier set perspective, to be really good. However, for all of those who like dreamt about the obliteration taking over, I don't know if that's happening in 10.1.
Biceps has been testing obliteration quite a bit, and as far as the tier set is concerned, it does change the playstyle a little bit, and it doesn't actually favor either of the 2 builds, considering that it's mostly around Frostworm's Fury, and Frostworm's Fury debuffing a lot of the enemies. Obviously, you're probably going to be playing some version of Pillar of Frost and Ice Cap and things like that, which are obviously really great. Historically, they have been playing with obliteration more so than with breath, and they have addressed the breath a little bit to kind of offset this. However, the breath issues will probably still remain. Obliteration is also still better in Mythic Plus than it is in Raid, so it's still up for grabs. However, it is looking pretty good. However, we're kind of hesitant on ranking it a little bit too high, since nobody actually really has proper sims out for all of the specs, and we're still testing things out with DK, so I think maybe a B tier.
B tier it is. Now, Unholy Death Knight, on the other hand, you would think we would rank it a little bit higher than Frost DK. However, well, okay, let's be real. Unholy DK is getting buffs for 10.1. It got some buffs on live. It's getting some more buffs than 10.1. Yeah. However, the tier set...
Tier set definitely adds some... Okay, so one of the main problems that I keep hearing about from all of the Unholy DK mains out there is that you're losing puzzle blocks, which personally I have an issue with. Whenever a spec is so reliant on a specific piece of gear to actually function, and this is probably why we're seeing all of the buffs, because obviously you're not going to have it anymore, and you shouldn't be that reliant on a specific trinket, even though the tier set does give you a bunch of mastery. It's likely not enough, because it gives you, I think it's like 12% mastery, something like that, which I don't know if it means that much for Unholy, because Unholy can get to like 70-80% mastery levels in terms of like raw percentages, so that's not gonna offset the loss of puzzle blocks too much. Although Unholy's damage profile is always really good, it's very hard to rank this because it's one of the better specs out there, but it just feels like the perception is just weak.
We still have like a lot of other specs that could take the cake in front of Unholy. So our prediction for now for Unholy will be into a C tier, and mainly because the impact of losing the puzzle box will be huge. Tier set doesn't really compensate, more or less. All right. Havoc Demon Hunter. Now, we are looking at like a top melee DPS boy on live, and it's probably going to be a top melee DPS boy on 10.1 Season 2 Dragonflight, because, okay, you kind of have like this emphasis on the I-beam play, which I guess is really good. The damage numbers, although very subject to tuning, they're still pretty high up there. Like overall, the spec is like super strong, and it doesn't doesn't really see like impactful changes to like really get us worried about, oh my god, Demon Hunter is gonna fall off way off the bat.
No. Well, obviously the tier set is definitely a bonus increase, and they keep adjusting it. We have seen buffs to the tier set, to the I-Beam, and to the amount of fury you need to consume to activate the bonus. And I-Beam is definitely one of the better single target abilities that you have. Obviously it hits AoE as well, but it does do a lot of single target damage as well, which is probably where Havoc kind of suffered. Everybody knows that single target and raid performance is where Havoc lacks, and you can probably sometimes see that on tyrannical bosses. However, with the focus on the current tier set, that might actually change, and even with that, so Havoc is just a really good design spec for Mythic
It
Plus.
is. We're gonna predict this is gonna be an A tier, hands down.
Sure.
Now, controversial or not, it's time for Boomkin, and we all remember when we first did our first predictions for Boomkin and placed it on S tier. Everybody was like hating it and stuff.
It took a while to get its feet off the ground, and right now it's also a little bit weird, and it's an issue that we're gonna see on another spec as well. The tier set that Boomkin gets is definitely kind of weaker than what we're getting right now, unless they're gonna buff it, you know, post of we recording this. But right now, Balance is probably gonna have even worse single target, or at least at the same level of single target. But the 4 set for Balance Druid currently in Season 1 was the strongest 4 set in the game as far as I know, so you're losing that, and you're not gaining that much AoE. And the single target doesn't seem to be that much addressed, so I'm not too sure where it's gonna be. It's probably still gonna be good, but I see it only being good halfway through the season. So at the very least, at the release, I don't see it that high.
Probably a B tier around that. But I mean, AoE will still be pretty strong, especially in high keys. That will definitely bump it up. But it's not S tier material, not just here, judging from like the data we've had so far and testing out. Yeah, Feral Druid on the other hand. Now, you've seen Feral Druids a lot in DMDI. Of course, you've seen it like in logs in current season, like doing really, really good. I think we have like a little bit of an issue with the tier set, because we are talking a lot about the tier sets because they will impact, you know, how the specs will perform and how the synergies will work or whatever. It's kind of a hit or miss. I mean, on the one hand, you do get some buffs to like, you know, the agility. You have passive combo points over there generating and stuff.
That's always a little bit weird, because it's hard to judge these specs. It's just raw flat damage, and the fact that the combo points generate passively, it's something that they kind of address with how they've changed Frenzy, where you can retain some of the excess combo points if you end up capping them, but that's only during Frenzy, or Berserk rather, because I always confuse the two. So it's hard to see exactly how this will translate, because Feral didn't actually get a lot of changes ever since, and it's still up for, Feral still has a good damage profile. It's really good design for AoE, and it doesn't really feel
definitely, like the profile is more or less the same. You won't be losing out too much, but it just doesn't seem to have like a spark to like, okay, this will definitely be somewhere in the top echelons.
It might be better than what we put it up, but this is kind of where
we're gonna place it into a B tier still, because once again, we still have to take into account some other specs that are rolling in fast and high. Speaking of Devastation Evoker, I mean, you made a video about the rework.
Oh yeah, for sure. And the rework definitely came after the tier set has been announced, and it does address a lot of the AoE things that Devastation can do. Not too many of the single targets, so it still feels like Devastation will have the issue on tyrannical bosses and the overall single target, which is not that big of a problem in dungeons. However, with the changes to the AoE and the improvement of the talent system, I still feel Devastation will be even better next season, which is probably what you want from a new class.
Oh, for sure. It definitely feels like they will have more AoE options, and at least, you know, for keys where you are required to like do less single target, more AoE, this will definitely be a pumper. So I think a prediction would be for A tier on Devastation.
The Havoc of range space.
Yes. Okay. What about Beast Mastery Hunter? Beast Mastery Hunter, who was kind of renowned for its single target prowess or whatever. Can it do the same thing in 10.1 while adding some AoE on top of that?
Well, the tier set definitely adds a bunch more single target damage and more uptime on Bestial Wrath, which just means more flat out damage on everything, which is pretty much what BM does. It's kind of like an Outlaw Rogue, where you just activate your AoE and you pretty much do your single target rotation and it cleaves into AoE, so that kind of scales with the two. It's probably going to be very, very consistent, very reliable. It doesn't seem like it's going to blow you out of the water, and my opinion is that at the beginning of the season is just going to be really strong. it will probably fall off later on. I see from other specs that have like more impactful tier sets.
Oh yeah, that's true. Like whenever we get into seasons, you guys probably notice that, you know, 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month after, they're still tuning the shit out of these specs. Yeah. But so far, we kind of predict this spec BM in A tier, because
right now it's getting good things.
Ones, yeah, it's not getting like squashed or whatever. It at the very least, it's getting more on top of what it already has. So yeah, more kudos to them. Hunter, on the other hand, I guess it's a similar story, not too different from BM Hunter. The tier set is kind of low impact. I mean, we haven't seen any changes yet so far to like the initial information regarding it. Single target also didn't get addressed too much. Like,
kind of the opposite story of BM Hunters, and it doesn't seem like the community has received the marksmanship tier set too well. It's fine, you get a few more kill shots out there, but that's neither here nor there.
I mean, I was expecting it for like, you know, the famous AoE burst to be like more addressed or something with the tier set.
I mean, that's a niche, but they don't seem to be playing into it. But at the same time, they're not really fixing its issues with single target, so I don't know exactly what that's supposed to do. I mean, but it does have the damage, so
it still retains its value, right? So it's still saying it retains its positives from the current season, just not too major impacts. So even if I like take it from the current season and adding all of the new item levels and new gear and all that, it will still be like probably around an A tier
for sure.
So we're keeping it up there with Beast Mastery as well. And oh boy, here comes.
Next up, we have Arcane Mage, everybody.
No. All right. So we have to talk about Survival Hunter, because this has been the bane of Flame's existence in the game. Where's that rework, Blizzard?
Dude, I don't understand. I feel like I hear Assassination Rogues crying that their spec just doesn't function properly, and Reds were also on the same boat, but they kind of got out of the boat, and they're very much happier now. And it feels like Survival is still in the boat, down at the boat, in a hole, in the boat that's sinking to the bottom of the sea.
Yeah.
Survival
still got buffs, bro. I mean, it's getting buffed in 10.1, but
well, I mean, it's not getting that much buffs. The single target is getting nerfed, and that's the main appeal of Survival. And not to mention that the tier set addresses the AoE that's already weak. It revolves the playstyle around Wildfire Bombs, which are one of the weaker abilities. You definitely ignore them half of the time now. So they need to like buff it a lot more. They don't need to bring it back to how it was in Shadowlands, but unless they change the design, it's gonna be very difficult unless you're gonna see some like 50% more damage, which is probably what it would need, but even so, it might not be enough. We're probably looking at maybe a rework in Save Survival at this point.
Yeah, but so far, it's gonna be D-tier prediction for Survival.
D for don't play it.
As much as we hate placing it into D-tier, we have to face the reality of it, so hopefully this will maybe get the Retribution treatment somewhere along the line of 10.1. 10.1.5 maybe? Who knows?
20.2.
Okay, now let's see Arcane Mage. Arcane Mage, looking at it like from what it performs currently, you haven't seen it do too well, not like recently. It was one of the stronger specs at the beginning of Dragonflight, but moving into 10.1, we can talk about the tier set, you know, addressing like the mana consumption during our Arcane Surge. But I still think like is that like a big thing in M+?
Well, that's the thing, because the way that the Force set works is that whenever you consume a big chunk of mana, I think it's 24,000 now, it's been addressed a couple of times, you gain the buff. But in Mythic Plus, during your Arcane Surge window, Arcane doesn't really spend that much mana as it would in Raid. So already Arcane is not really incentivized to explode in AoE in Mythic Plus. Obviously, you probably play Fire or Frost over Arcane, and it doesn't really feel like the tier set addresses those issues. We haven't really seen any buffs or nerfs or any changes to Arcane in terms of talent, so we can assume that, you know, outside of the tier set, it's the same spec, and the tier set doesn't really seem to address the issues with Arcane, so it's kind of hard to place it. It's kind of losing its burst, so I don't.
At the very least, we're gonna have it somewhere similar to how it is currently. So maybe a C tier.
It's a little bit low. I mean, if we put Unholy into C tier, I think Arcane
is definitely there. Fire Mage, on the other hand, could potentially be upper than Arcane. Well, it will definitely be higher than Arcane. That's for sure. You've seen a lot of like Fire Mage rising up in the current season. A lot of like, I think like they want to push this playstyle with Phoenix Flames.
Yeah, that's weird because even talking with, or if you even like listen to some of the big boys like Preheat, it's a very weird playstyle since Phoenix Flames is not something that Fire does a lot.
Yeah,
it's kind of there, but it doesn't really flow well into your combustion window because obviously it's on the GCD while Fire Blast is not.
This is the biggest problem with Phoenix Flames. I mean, it's nice. It's a nice addition to like get your instant pyros proccing or whatever, especially during combustion. You can make like the little dance with Fire Blast and Phoenix Flames. But Phoenix Flames being on the GCD and then pushing more gameplay to that,
it's not guaranteed.
It slows the.
Yeah, it's not and also it's not guaranteed crit because you're likely not gonna run the Alexstrasza's Fury or whatever it is. You're probably still gonna run from the Ashes, which are a choice node as far as I know from Fire, and you're not gonna get the guaranteed crit for Phoenix Flames, which might help it. But the thing is, it's a similar story with Survival where they're buffing or pushing a playstyle towards a spell that you don't really use or you're trying not to use as much as you can. So it's kind of hard to judge the performance of it, although Fire usually scales high. But at the beginning of the season, I feel like it's probably gonna struggle a bit.
Yeah. This is why we are thinking about placing it into B tier. We're predicting Fire will be for a while in B tier and other like specs.
I expect it to be like A tier in like a month or so.
Yeah, somewhere down the line it will probably rise up, but for like at least the first month it will. Our prediction. We can't be wrong. Again, it's prediction, speculative. Okay, don't jump on the hate train. Let's talk about Frost. Now, Frost can definitely see some bumps to its damage. I mean, the tier set definitely will bump up its damage. You can now AoE with Flurry.
Oh my, that's a hot take because I really love that kind of system, but I feel like from what I understand, the damage is just not there. So Flurry now can also splash into AoE, which
really cool.
Sounds like really cool, right?
Why not?
And they've changed it. Initially, the tier set would buff Frostbolt, which is like weird, but now it buffs Iceland, so it kind of fixed some of the issues with the playstyle. You're still probably gonna play, the Icy Veins, Mega Icelands all the time, which that's good, maybe bad. I don't know, maybe you wanted some build variety. But its damage is still very, very sensible to how much the tier set will impact it. It's not obvious that the tier set will push it for more than what it's doing now.
Yeah, so that being said, tuning, because obviously there's going to be a lot of tuning here. We're going to place it like alongside Fire, at least for the first couple of weeks towards the first month of the season. Probably B tier zone predictions once again. Now, Windwalker, which season 1 of Dragonflight, kind of like reigning supreme all over the place. We kind of known there was so AoE for Windwalker will probably still be very strong because it's a Windwalker. There's not gonna be a problem with that. I kind of like the force set kind of making it more powerful to like Fist of Fury doing like a lot more single target damage.
I think it does 35% more damage to its main target. And
you can call that maybe a weakness for Windwalker, although it wasn't terribly bad. It was something that could have been addressed.
It's in the bottom part anyway, so I know Windwalkers would like a little bit more damage. But one of the better things that they did to address the performance in it is that they've changed, as far as the tier set is concerned, they've changed the RNG proc of the 2 set, where Sun King always gives you it goes Nova. We don't know what Nova is. I mean, obviously it explodes in AoE damage, but they also buffed its damage by 12%, which is like a little extra addition to its single target damage.
Yeah.
Obviously, you don't want it to be good at everything because it's already really strong, but
well, it depends on how that Nova will hit and for what numbers it will hit, but definitely the tier set is moving a lot more forward towards like single target damage, but yeah, let's be fair, Windwalker kind of lacked. That being said, predictions-wise, we're not going to place it into S tier. However, it has like a million chances to become an S tier, but a respectable A tier for Windwalker is granted. Now, Retribution Paladins. I guess a lot of people will say that Retribution Paladin is broken. The rework just busted the class all over the place. First and foremost, it's fun to play. It's smooth. It makes a lot more sense. And if the numbers are aligning to that, then yes, like I've tested a lot of like Red Paladin on the PTR. I've tested the tier set because it wasn't available at the first, and Red Paladin packed up with its damage profile and the rework and the tier set. Tier set I'm not too happy about, but it does what it does. It's fine. Applying judgment all over the place could be a very good thing, not gonna lie. I was just expecting a little bit more. But everything packed around, and not to mention that they haven't implemented on the PTR or have the actual nerf, the 3% aura and all of that. Even with that, on AoE, Red Paladins are going to be amazing. Not only that, but
yeah. So we've looked at both raids and dungeons, and everywhere we look, Red just seems to do like a lot of damage. And obviously Marcelian plays a little bit more and has a little bit in depth, but at the end of the day, some people just care about the damage, and sometimes that's even worth it, even though with the rework, red actually brings a lot of good stuff for the party, so you can also make an argument of like, okay, we might need a red here, right?
Yeah, definitely you're gonna want that red or that passive healing, and this is not biased at all, but judging from everything that we've seen and looked at, this is probably the first S tier.
Putting it there.
I was waiting for a long time to place.
How long, man? How long?
We are predicting Red Paladin to be an S tier spec for Mythic Plus. Again, Mythic Plus can be subject to tuning. All these specs could be like very nerfed to the ground, but so far, judging by what we know and tested, first spec. Let's go, baby. Retribution, baby. Shadow Priest. On the other hand, let's talk about how many reworks does this spec need for it to
now
function.
or in the next 2 weeks.
No, but to be fair, it is strong even at 10.1, right? It's like the AoE is like super powerful.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I guess it's a little bit easier to do AoE.
Yeah, so I actually tested Shadow a bunch of times in the Mythic Plus, and as much as I bashed the rework, it's actually kind of fun. It's nice. It's not that bad. It definitely adds a less convoluted part of your rotation. Does make it as annoying, and it is still very strong. It's hard to see how high it can go because we haven't tested super high keys yet, but it does feel like it's going to be strong. How strong? We'll probably see how it all scales in the end. But the problem remains that its single target is just poop. Where now we can probably see Shadow being an S tier spec, clearly. It still has all the good pre-stuff, but the fact that the single target isn't addressed, it feels like it's maybe even a downgrade from the current season, and I cannot honestly see it as the same strength overall.
Oh, yeah. But it's probably gonna be S tier just because of power infusion. That's a different topic. For now, we're gonna place it into A tier. Because yeah, we kind of like want to also like ring some bells for, you know, issues of different issues from these specs, like single target for Shadow, and you know, a total rework for survival and all of that. Okay, talking about something that needs maybe a little bit more addressing. I don't know if a rework is mandatory. Assassination Rogue in Mythic Plus. I mean, for those who enjoy the playstyle, I guess it can be fun. For those who just want to like push higher and higher and feel okay playing the spec in Mythic Plus, not that fun. It's like the state of Assassination is quite poor. I mean, we've been talking to Whisper a lot about this, and he like made it pretty clear, like performance, player feedback, it's all there. Tier set is decent, I guess.
I mean, it buffs, makes Rapture and Crimson Tempest do nature damage as well, and they've kind of changed they were both initially doing 33%. Now Rapture's doing 40 and Crimson Tempest doing 30. I imagine so that maybe we won't end up using Crimson Tempest in single target. I know that was a thing at one point, and that was just...
They'll probably...
I haven't heard good things about it. But yeah, from what we know, Assassination is just in need of a lot more attention. And to be fair to Survival did receive a lot more changes than Assassination. So
I mean, let's face it, Assassination isn't the worst out of the bunch out there. You can talk about maybe being the worst rogue spec for Mythic Plus out of the three. And again, I love playing Assassination, but it just feels too much work to get such average results every time I try to play it in Mythic Plus.
Mythic Plus seems to be the...
Yeah, so you know, with all due respect, we're gonna place it into a C tier. Hopefully, it will get some further iteration.
Come on with the buffs, Blizzard. Let's go.
Let's do it. Now, let's get to Outlaw Rogue. And Outlaw Rogue, first of all, you've seen the tier set.
Yes, explosive tier set, dude. Jesus.
Well, that tier set could be like busted like from the get-go. It got nerfed, okay, so it's not like all doom and gloom, but I didn't really notice any like downgrades too much for Outlaw. It will still be one of the top performing melees in Mythic Plus.
For sure.
You cannot really argue with its toolkit and the way Outlaw makes it perform like decent in single target, great in AoE, and great in cleave as well. Not to the extent you would see like numbers-wise from a Red Paladin or some different casters within this list, but again, there's nothing to worry about too much when it comes to Outlaw. It's just...
It's under the scope from Blizzard, because we've seen multiple nerfs across the board for Outlaw, and especially related to the tier set, which is, I mean, maybe that's fair. Obviously, they have internal access to a lot of numbers and a lot of statistics. One of the cool things about Outlaw is that the tier set actually works towards its spec and how it does. Obviously, it activates with your AoE, it spreads with your AoE on top of giving you good single targets. So I feel like it's one of the more balanced designs out there, and I expect some great things.
Yeah, let's place it into A tier. Probably gonna become an S tier along the line. We'll just have to see how Blizzard decides to like tune and work with the bolts and knobs and everything. Subtlety, again, very S tier current spec for Mythic Plus. Don't see it being changed too much in Season 2 of Dragonflight. I mean, it's still like design-wise, we feel it's like the best designed rogue spec, especially for Mythic Plus. The spec obviously is very, very great in a lot of dungeons where you have a lot of mobs, because, you know, AoE cap is a huge thing. I guess the tier set bonuses are okay, nothing quite amazing. At the very least, it will retain its strong position in terms of like its damage profile. Sure, we can talk about different items being dropped from the Mythic Plus and the Braids or whatever, crafted items bumping up these specs to some extent, but just judging by the kit and how it's performing so far on the PTR, it's still very strong. Not S tier. We're not convinced that S tier is the place.
I mean, it does have to compete with Red Paladin, which is a beast of its own.
It's been blasting. Yeah, it's been blasting. It's pretty hard. I mean, their competition would be obviously in uncapped AoE, and so far, Red Paladins do a lot of damage, man. So
yeah, that's the thing. Because Sub might actually be a little bit better over the course of the patch, considering that. From what we expect, the big AoEers, Shadow Priest, Balanced Druid, and Distro Warlocks might struggle to get there quicker than Sub.
Yeah. No, but I think A tier is still up there. Like, we are not placing these specs over here from A tier. Like, okay, Subtlety is far worse than, I don't know, BM Hunter or Devastation. No, they're on the same pedestal. It would just be a matter of choosing, and, you know, it's still a prediction, speculation. Elemental Shaman. Do we see love for Elemental?
Oh my God,
Do we see the love?
The tier set is messy. Okay, so tier set aside, the Elemental has received a couple of buffs in the last couple of weeks, and we've seen it rise in rankings. And if you don't know, you probably haven't seen our last tier list when we ranked range DPS. Elemental is doing good, period. Now, with the tier set, it's one of the more interesting tier sets where you just get like random procs of Stormkeeper, which is obviously really cool for Elemental. But the cool part about it is the force set that you can actually buff either single target or AoE, which gives you the flexibility of not being like shoehorned into like one particular thing, which is probably what Elemental would appreciate, and maybe all specs would appreciate in the end. But it's just good.
Yeah. I love that design philosophy when it comes to like a tier set, having that versatility. You know, the like using both buff and single target AoE. It's amazing. We all know that Elementals also like got like small increments of buffs here and there during the course of the expansion. We think on Season 2 of Dragonflight, this will at least be an A tier. So we're placing it here with, you know, with the A-team gang, okay? Enhancement Shaman. Now, initially, Enhancement Shaman had kind of like a very weird tier set, and I know there was a lot of outcry about that. Luckily, that has changed. And listen, Enhancement Shaman was like super performing anyways. I mean, there wasn't like too many negatives to address, but with this new tier set that they've implemented, I think it just addressed like the concerns initially posted for 10.1. So
it depends a lot on how the overall damage will end up being, since enhancement is definitely a you definitely need to see it in practice. It has a lot of RNG procs to it. It is still one of the better design specs period in the whole game. And we kind of want to put it into S tier, but it's...
No, we'll place it into A tier for
leave the S tier alone, right?
Listen, you don't see this every day, okay? So we never predicted Red Paladins to be S tier. Let them, even if it's a prediction, even if the season will launch and we're not going to have this, it's still here. You have this image.
For the first time.
Okay, let's move on to Affliction Warlock. Affliction Warlock. Well, again, looking at a spec that can potentially do a lot of like AoE damage, does the force set get you like... I mean, force set will definitely help with the AoE, that's for sure. The ramp is like the discussion here.
So Affliction has gotten over the years, ever since the detrimental BFA iteration where Affliction was like not a spec you could play. It has received a bunch of changes, and we're constantly seeing this being addressed as well. The tier set basically revolves around Vitaltain and Phantom Singularity, but you're likely going to use it on Vitaltain from what we know so far in terms of the sims. And it will just give you, on top of everything that it does, it will just also give you 10% extra damage, which is really good to have access to at the beginning of the pool, since that's where Affliction also really shines. Not sure about single target because in dungeons, when you do go Affliction, and you've seen it in MDI as well, it's really good at exploding AoE. Maybe it's one of the best Warlock specs at doing that. Demo has some burst as well, but this definitely has the ramp. But Affliction might be the more reliable one so far, so it's looking pretty good.
Yeah, it's looking pretty good. We can definitely predict it into an A tier here. Just have to see how things work. Again, we don't know. The ramp may be like less of an issue with like the instant 10% damage from Vile Taint or whatever, but there's things that we'll have to like further test out and see how they happen. Demonology, on the other hand, oh boy.
I mean, people have been talking about the tier set being one of the best tier sets designs so far, and I feel like a lot more specs and classes in general should have this, where you can just reduce the cooldown of a bit. Because the Demonology, and kind of true with the other Warlock specs, Warlocks have an issue with matching their cooldowns together. They have like different durations, and we've been playing Tyrant for a long time, and we've been using Grimoire Felgar for Tyrant, but now we can reduce its cooldown by just playing it, and you can actually get them to match, and you'll have big turns every 1.5 minutes, not to mention you have big AoE burst with Implosion that's almost really accessible. It's a very, very self-reliant spec. You're not shoehorned into like infernal windows like Destro is, or having the tank keep things on the same pack like Destro is, or having to ramp AoE damage like Destro is. Wait, I'm saying something?
Like Destro is. Basically, let's just cut the crap. This is the second S tier spec we predict for Mythic Plus.
One range, one melee.
Yeah. It's a good pair. It's a good pair. You did mention something about Destro Lock, and I think it's the next spec we have to rank on this.
The polar opposite from what the community has
shoehorn much? Shoehorn? Do you want
like
a horn or a shoe?
The horn and the shoes? We can get both. But listen,
still dependent on
yeah. So what Destro has gotten is the Channel Demon Fire, kind of like going into it. The Channel Demon Fire is not a fun ability to press right now for Destruction Warlock, although it has been a fun ability in the past. It definitely requires spreading Immolate, which is not something that you normally do right now in AoE, spreading Immolate. You used to do it with Cataclysm, which is something that you probably won't want to play with Destruction high keys, because Inferno is so much better. However, Channel Demon Fire has been addressed about 2 or 3 times, where now it just flat out increases your overall damage. The 2 set has been recently addressed as well, where it kind of deals a little bit more single target damage, because it was the 2 set for Destro was probably one of the worst simming 2 sets in the game in the next season.
Yeah, but overall, I mean, your AoE will still be like will scale massively if pulled right, and this is like the major thing. Like if the tanks will pull. As the
keep it in the goddamn thing.
The Rain of Fire thing is gonna. I mean, single target is also gonna be very, very strong, but I don't see it being like at the level of like the other specs.
It's a similar story to Fire, where I think it might be slow to pick up its damage at the start of the season, but it will probably be strong later on.
Okay, so for the first couple of weeks, at least, we're gonna see destruction into a very respectable B tier. Arms Warrior. Now, Arms Warrior. Can we talk about some major some major burst damage onto arms? I think this is maybe one of the issues, because it is like super bursty, like it maybe the biggest AoE in the game.
Does have access to probably one of the biggest bursts in AoE, where you can combine, and I don't think the playstyle will change much in 10.1 with the tier set as well, which actually has been addressed, because I know a lot of people complain about having to use Slam, which is, similar story to Destro, but that's been changed right now. You don't have to use Slam anymore. Mortal Strike does similar things to what Frost Mage's Flurry does, where it just like splashes away in AoE, which kind of makes sense, considering that Mortal Strike was one of the biggest damage sources for arms in AoE, which is like weird. Up there with Blade Storm, and having access to Warbreaker, Blade Storm, Merciless Bone Grinder into Whirlwind, into a lot of cleaving, into more Blade Storm, into more Bone Grinder. It's just really, 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 really good.
No, it's a good spec. Likely not to be on top, like competing with the other melees, but definitely like worth the shot, at least in terms of like B tierish the zone.
Yeah, so B tier specs are probably going to be a lot better later on, but the tier set doesn't seem like they're pushing it into like A tier level.
I mean, listen, if you like, I don't know, does it have like better AoE burst than Marksman? Could be a debate.
Debatable.
Could be a debate. But obviously, Marksman has a lot of other things going for it. Okay, last on the list is the Fury Warrior, and this has been a consistent spec all throughout Dragonflight. I feel like always strong output and design, no problem. Tier set do we love the tier set?
Oh yeah, it's basically.
I think it's one of the best designed so far for Fury.
Simple.
Yeah,
it's like just buffing Rampage. So
yeah, just throw in like more Rampage smash hard all over the place. You know, with a lot more
Fury
and stuff. That's, I mean, the spec isn't like the most giga complicated to play, and that's a good thing because you want some of your melee specs at least to be a lot more smoother and faster. It's like likely to work well, and it will definitely like bump Fury like in terms of like its damage profile. It's one of the tier sets that seems to push Fury a little bit ahead of the curve right now, because obviously getting just a 10% crit chance on Rampage, although it's boring, it's probably better than what other specs get, like crit damage. Crit is good, okay?
Yeah, and you know, Rampage buffing Bloodthirst to do a lot more damage is also really good. It's simplistic, but it definitely works, and that's kind of the theme of Fury. Simple, but works.
And efficient as well. So, ranking-wise, we could place it as well into A tier. So, whew, in terms of predictions, man, we have a lot of A tier specs.
I mean, that's good. In terms of, I don't know how much of this will remain true in about a month, but if it does, at least in the major part, it's nice to see a lot more specs into A tier than going down a notch. So I'm kind of trying to put this positive energy out there.
No, it's definitely positive. Again, when it comes to Mythic Plus, you cannot really look at logs because nobody's like really logging too much on the Mythic Plus side of things. All you can be based around when you do these rankings or predictions, like, or whatever you tested out, whatever other like prominent spec-focused players are testing out, and you know, getting that information from them. So it's like super prediction, like super speculative. Okay,
definitely will change, but that's the fun part of it, seeing as it is, and like knowing how the meta will change.
You'll let us know how much we up with this one, but it's again really fun to see. And tuning is like, for all of these specs, tuning can like flip this well, except survival, tuning will flip this could potentially flip it upside down. That being said, thank you Patreons for supporting the content. As always, check the link in the description if you want to join the team that way. Take your Warcraft Logs companion app for sponsoring the video. You can click the link in the description and download it for yourself. Start using it. Last but not least,
thank you, dear viewer, for watching, and we will catch you in the next one.
Have a great weekend. Bye.
I've been loving it then, I still love it now. Still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. Getting better every day, let me show you how. Cause still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. It's getting harder to stay, but at the end of the day, it's a guilty pleasure, so just log in and play. Whether it's classic or retail, I'ma do a /bow. Still, I play WoW.